What's going on, everybody? Bear here, back again with Spec of Tech. Welcome to my channel. So today we're going to be talking about having a subwoofer near field and tactile subwoofer response. But first, if you're new here, make sure you subscribe, tick the little bell icon so you can be notified when my next video drops. And if you like the content that I'm putting out, please do hit the like button. It helps out the channel. All right, so let's get right into it right after the intro. Okay, welcome back, guys. So like I said, today we're going to be talking about having a subwoofer near field and tactile response from said subwoofer. So first, why would you want to do this? So for me in particular, I was always looking for a little bit more of an extreme bass experience. So I used to have my subwoofers, like most people, away from my main listening position. I've had them to where they've been both up front. I've had one up front, one behind, two up front, two behind. I've had several different variations of subwoofers. But I was always looking for a little bit more. I was always looking for my chair to shake a bit more, and I just wanted that more extreme experience. So for those of you that may be looking for that, this could be the answer to what you're looking for if you haven't tried this. Now, of course, your degree of tactile response or your degree of tactile energy is going to depend on what type of subwoofer that you would be putting close or near field to your listening position. So everybody will be different. And of course, with subwoofers, every room is different as well. So your response would always be slightly different than everyone else's. So what would be the benefit of moving a subwoofer near field? So if you feel like your bass experience is lacking, and yeah, you get some audible bass and you're enjoying the audible bass that you're getting, but you're not getting the tactile response that you want, or you want some more shake in your chair, one way to accomplish that is to put a subwoofer near field. Now, of course, there is other ways to accomplish that. You can use transducers or bass shakers, or what a lot of people refer to them as butt kickers, but that's a brand name. There are some really good transducers out there that offer you a great experience as well, like Croson's. But in this video, we're going to specifically discuss having a near field subwoofer. So if you are looking for a tactile response and you don't want to put a subwoofer near field, then that's what you would be looking at doing, is putting in some transducers. Today we're going to specifically cover having a subwoofer near field. So the benefits, of course, being a much higher tactile energy or tactile response. So when you put a subwoofer close to your seating, it's going to shake. It's going to shake your seat. So the closer you put a subwoofer to your seat, the more tactile energy you're going to get, the more it's going to shake your seat. So there are some variables that are going to affect how much response you're going to get. For example, if you're using a sofa or if you're using individual recliners, if you're using a sofa, then the tactile energy can kind of transfer throughout the sofa. So if you have one subwoofer near field, more people are going to experience that tactile energy than if you have recliners, for instance. If you have individual recliners, then obviously you're going to have to put the subwoofer behind one of them, or maybe even in between two of them, and then maybe those two seats will get tactile response. But if it's not directly behind the recliner, then you're going to lose a little bit of tactile response if you're putting it in between them. So there are some variables there, guys, that I've experienced myself. When I had a sofa, having one subwoofer behind there kind of did transfer the tactile energy throughout the sofa, but of course those sitting the farthest away from the subwoofer were experiencing a little less tactile response. Now that I've switched to recliners, the same can be said, but to a more severe degree. So if you have the subwoofer behind your main listening recliner and you have other recliners to the side, they're not going to experience much tactile response because they're not connected and the subwoofer is not directly behind their seats. So what I opted to do is I bought a PSA, or Power Sound Audio TV3612, which is a dual driver unit. So I can actually have one driver behind my main listening position and one driver behind the seat beside me, which gives those two seats some pretty incredible tactile response. But of course, my third recliner is experiencing much less tactile response. But I'm not going to sit here and bore you with all the variables. That's just something to think about when you're talking about putting a subwoofer near field. And then of course you're going to experience less tactile response. The smaller the subwoofer, the less powerful the subwoofer. The bigger the subwoofer, the more powerful the subwoofer. You're going to get much more tactile response. And of course how that subwoofer is tuned, is it sealed, is it ported. You need to take all those variables into account when you're talking about putting a subwoofer near field. I used to have a Klipsch SPL 150 behind my seat, which I bought specifically just for tactile response because again, I was looking for a more extreme bass experience, and it did offer some decent tactile response. I was definitely happy with the response I got, but I'm one of those guys that gets bit by the upgrade bug quite often, so then I upgraded to an SVS PB16 behind my main listening position. And again, definitely a big upgrade there in tactile response, especially in the lower frequencies. And again, I was happy with my tactile response, but the chair beside me wasn't getting much tactile feel, so I decided let's try a dual driver unit. So I switched to dual PSA TV3612 subwoofers. So now I have one in my front left corner and one behind my main listening position, as well as the recliner directly to my right. And it provides some amazing tactile feel to those two recliners. I've never experienced quite the mid bass that I've experienced from the TV3612, so the punch from gunshots and that sort of thing is incredible. It definitely adds a new level of immersion to a movie or even to music, having that tactile response. Now that I've gone to a near field subwoofer, I don't think I could ever not have a near field subwoofer. Not only does it add some great audible bass right near field to you, some great pressurization, it just adds to the immersion so much. It makes you feel like what's going on the screen is actually happening in your room, especially if you get a subwoofer that has a significant amount of power like a TV3612. I mean, every gunshot, every explosion, every swoop of a chopper blade of a helicopter just gives you that tactile response in your seat, and it adds another dimension to the immersion to help you get into the movie and help you feel like you're actually there. I mean, isn't that pretty much the goal of music or movies, is just to help you somewhat escape reality and be a part of that fictional world, or to help you feel like that music is happening right in front of you or right around you. You're really there with the music or there with the movie. It definitely helps me enjoy music and movies that much more. Another benefit to having a near field subwoofer is if you feel like your bass is lacking in general, you just don't feel like you have enough bass in your room, putting it near field can increase that. It makes you feel like there's more bass than what's actually there. So if you have, say, a smaller sub, say a 10-inch subwoofer, and you only have one of them in your room and you have it in the corner and you're getting some okay audible bass, but you feel like you want more, if you put that subwoofer near field, you are going to feel like you have more bass. That's just what it does. I mean, it shakes your seat. It makes you feel like the bass you have in your room is more powerful than it is when you have that subwoofer far away from your main listening position. So if you're not happy with your bass and you want something a little bit more, why not try putting your subwoofer near field to see if it gives you what you're looking for? You don't necessarily have to buy another subwoofer. Of course, having two subwoofers does give you a smoother response around the room, but if you only have one main listening position and you're not really sharing with anybody, you don't necessarily need two subwoofers. But keep in mind that there is some drawback to having only one subwoofer and placing it near field, which I'll cover in a little bit. But back to the benefits. So if you are feeling like you have a lack of bass, try putting it near field, see if that helps. And then of course experiment with the placement near field as well, maybe a little bit farther away, a little bit closer, left, right, that sort of thing, just to see what gives you the response that you prefer with your ears. Another benefit to having a near field subwoofer, let's say you have a family, or let's say you are in an apartment or you're in a condo, you're in an area where having big powerful subwoofers could annoy somebody else, so to speak, annoy your neighbors, annoy your family, or wake up the baby. This gives you an opportunity to have a bit more of a bass response without having to turn it up so loud. So when it's closer to you, it's obviously going to sound louder than if it's far away from you. So having it close to you means that you don't have to have it turned up so much, you don't have to have it shaking the walls everywhere for you to have a decent bass experience, or to have a bass experience that you're happy with. That may not be a benefit that is first on your mind. It may be something to look at. Put it near field. It makes it feel like you have more bass than what you do, and you don't have to crank it up to annoy the rest of the household, so to speak. In my opinion, that pretty much sums up the benefits of having a near field subwoofer. Now let's talk about some of the drawbacks. So drawback number one is you lose a lot of the low frequency response in your listening positions. So for instance, I have measured my subwoofers with RU, and of course the front left subwoofer gives me a much better low end response than the subwoofer directly behind my main listening position. So I've covered this in my RU video in the past, but it's just something to think about, that you are going to lose some of that low end response. It is a significant difference. It's not just a few decibels. Once you start getting to the mid-bass frequencies, then you're not experiencing that loss anymore. But keep that in mind, the low frequencies, you are going to experience a loss. So that's the main drawback, guys. The other drawback is you need to have space for a subwoofer directly behind your main listening position. So everybody's room is different. Everybody has their main listening positions in different spots. Some of you may have it right up against the wall. Some of you may have it up against something else. Everybody's situation is different. So you may not have room to put a subwoofer directly behind your main listening position, let alone a large one. So that's another drawback, is you need the space for it, and it does take up space. For me, it happens to work out because I have a shared room, so our family room is shared between being a family room and being my home theater room. So I take up approximately half of the room, and I just separate that with a heavy curtain, which allows me to put a subwoofer behind my main listening position without being too concerned about space. So the other drawback isn't necessarily a drawback. If you have the subwoofer turned up too much, it can be a little bit overbearing. It can overtake the other sound. So it is somewhat of a drawback, but it is in your control. You can always turn it down and tame it down a little bit so that it's not overbearing. It's much easier to have your bass overbearing if your subwoofer is that close to you versus being more far away from you. Of course, there could be more drawbacks with having a near-field subwoofer, but it all depends on your situation. For instance, if you only have one subwoofer and you put it near field, well, now you're cutting your low-end response by quite a bit, and you don't have a second subwoofer to help boost that up. But obviously everyone's situation is different, so just keep that in mind when you are exploring the option of having a near-field subwoofer. It's definitely going to work better if you have two subwoofers, but that is true for any room regardless if you have a near-field subwoofer or not. You're always going to have a better, smoother response throughout the room with two subwoofers, regardless if you have one near field or not. Alright, and for those of you that always want a demo with my videos, here comes your bass demo. I'm going to be doing some copyright-free music here just to demonstrate some of the bass coming from my front left PSA TV3612, but more specifically also the PSA TV3612 behind my main listening position. So for those of you that like to complain about cables, yes, there's some cables back there. Don't bother filling up my comments about my cables. Those are for the power recliners. What else can you do with them? I mean, they have to be there, and this is a concrete floor, so it's not like I can run them through the floor. Anyway, without further ado, let's hear some bass. Alright guys, I know these drivers don't move a whole lot, but there was some hard hitting bass happening there, especially when I was leaning against the seat for the main listening position. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure you subscribe, tick the little bell icons to be notified when my next video drops. And if you like the content, make sure you smash the like button. Alright, stay tuned for my next video guys, and stay techie.